see. May we have a roll call?
President Truthane,
Here?
Vice President Doss,
Here.
Trustee Clark,
Here.
Trustee Hinckley,
Here.
Trustee Duran.
Here.
Thank you. There was no action taken in closed session. Okay. And that brings us to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have our student board members tonight. Can I ask Board Member Duran to please read the mission at the top of the agenda?
The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student.
Board Member Hinckley, would you read the meeting norms, please?
Sure. 1, maintain a focus on what is best for our students. 2, show respect, never dismiss or devalue others. 3, be willing to compromise. 4, disagree when necessary agreeably. 5, make a commitment to effective deliberation, each one listening with an open mind while others are allowed to express their points of view. 6, participate by building on the thoughts of a fellow board member. 7, make a commitment to open communication and honesty, no surprises. 8, commit the time necessary to govern effectively. 9, be collaborative. 10, maintain confidentiality, which leads to the building of trust. And 11, look upon history as lessons learned, focus on the present and the future.
Thank you. And now we're at item E on the agenda, and I'll reiterate, there was no action taken in closed session. That brings us to approval of the agenda, but I received a request from our SELPA parent representative asking if we could move her report to earlier in our meeting, hopefully before we begin review and action. So I would like to move that we approve the agenda with that change in our SELPA report to before review and action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay. And that brings us to recognition of Classified Employees Appreciation Week.
Thank you, President Truthane, members of the board. I'm actually going to turn this over to Cheryl Cotton, our Director of Human Resources, for the recognition of our classified employees. And before she gets started on this, I really want the board and the community to know that without our classified employees, a lot would not happen. They are the backbone of our district because they are our support staff. And many times you may not see directly what they are doing. It is what keeps our district running very, very smoothly. So on behalf of staff, I really would like to commend our classified members, and that's our SEIU and CSEA. With that, I'll turn it over to Cheryl.
Thank you very much. We were here last time talking about our certificated employees, and now we are talking about our classified employees who are an integral part. They work one-on-one very closely with our students. The support that they provide and that they give is immeasurable, and we appreciate all of the work that they do, again, on behalf of the children and students of Albany Unified School District. I'd like to read the resolution to you right now. Whereas the governing board of the Albany Unified School District and Superintendent Williams wish to commend and express their appreciation to the custodial and maintenance staff, child nutrition staff, clerical staff, instructional support staff, computer support staff, and all other classified staff who serve the students of Albany Unified School District. And whereas the governing board and superintendent believe classified school employees deserve rightful recognition and public celebration for the caring deeds and contributions to our students. And whereas the classified employees employees support the smooth operation of offices, the safety and maintenance of buildings and property, and the safe transportation, healthy nutrition, and direct instruction of students. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the governing board of the Albany Unified School District proclaims May 20th through the 24th, 2019, to be Classified Employees Appreciation Week. Be it further resolved that the governing board of the Albany Unified School District encourages all members of our community to join with it, personally expressing appreciation to our classified employees for their dedication and devotion to their work. So thank you very much. At this time, the board may take action on this item.
This is a resolution, so I think we need a roll call.
President Trutain,
Aye.
Vice President Doss,
Aye.
Trustee Clark,
Yes?
Trustee Hinckley,
Aye.
Trustee Duran.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. President Trutain, may I have you sign the documents? And I would ask, I see Mr. Mosley here in the audience. Would you mind accepting this resolution on behalf of our classified employees? Well, come on up, please.
Stand and then have Cheryl and Dante, they'll take a picture for our website. You're just going to stand there, just going to go back right against it so I can get a picture of you with the board members. You too? All right. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
I
Yes.
just want to give a big shout out to all of the employees who were recognized this week. We appreciate you guys every single day for everything that you do, and just big props for everything that you do for our kids. Thank you.
Okay. I believe that moves us to the consent calendar. I do have one item. I noticed Marina Gonzalez is here. I would like to, she's listed on the personnel assignment order, and I think we should move her off of the consent calendar as a separate item. With that change, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar, or are there any other items that we want to discuss and move off?
I move that we approve the consent calendar with that one change.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Superintendent Williams, would you like to?
Thank you, President Trutain, members of the board and community. Cheryl Cotton announced that she is taking a position as assistant superintendent at the county level in Contra Costa County, and that left a vacancy. This is a Director 3 position, and given the budget constraints that we have, I've decided not to rehire the Director 3 position, but to have that position be moved to a HR coordinator position. Marina Gonzalez has been in our district for several years. She understands pretty much every aspect of the Human Resources Department. Both Cynthia Tia, who started training Marina, really started helping her with other aspects of the job that may have been beyond her current job description, but because she really wanted to learn. Marina is also currently taking classes, so she's not only doing a full-time job, but she's also in school. And so Cheryl Cotton has been continuing helping Marina, and I believe that she is well qualified to take on the position as Coordinator of Human Resources, and that is why I'm have this on the public personal assignment order. The savings to the district will be about $50,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Marina to come up?
And I wholeheartedly recommend this. She's well qualified for this position, and I'm very happy that she's agreed to take on this position.
Marina, I've known you as a parent. You've had a number of kids go through the district, and you also hired me when I was working for the district as a paraeducator. And so I've seen you in several different roles, and I'm so glad that you're getting the chance to move up in your career and shine in this district, and we really appreciate all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Williams and President Trutain. Yeah, I've been with the district for 12 years plus, and I've grown a lot professionally. But during that time, I've also had 3 children who have attended the schools, who have gone through, and they're out now. But during that time, I have, because of that, from both a colleague perspective and as well as a parent, I have a great deal of appreciation for the staff that have been a big part of our village and our family. And so on a very personal level, I am absolutely ecstatic to continue serving the AUSD staff and larger community. Thank you.
So since this was pulled from the consent calendar, I believe that we have to vote on moving Ms. Gonzalez to Personnel Coordinator. So I move that we approve of this, this status change of position.
Your turn.
Is it?
It is.
I happily second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that,
Thank you.
yeah. That moves us to board and superintendent reports.
Thank you, President Trutain, and hopefully I'm doing this right. Yes. Okay. At the last board meeting, the board asked me to provide an update on the budget reductions. And so I got a very short but pretty dense presentation for you tonight. There we go. I think I've got this right. Okay. So I want to take the board back to 2017-18 because there were some members of the board who were not on the board at that time. And the budget reductions that were done, so I want to just very quickly recap that. The district office administration, we reduced the budget by about $259,000. That's the elimination of the supervisor of maintenance and operations, the reduction of the Director 3 student services to Director 1 position, and the reduction of the communications manager, part of the executive assistant to the superintendent. And this was the former executive assistant to superintendent who also had the communications manager piece. So we took that section out for another savings of $36,000. We also did some district-wide department budget cuts for $125,000. So back in 2017-18, the budget adjustments were about $384,000. There were a few other things that we did for revenue enhancements. You know, things like we went with a different copier vendor. We worked with waste management to increase our recycling efforts, so to save some money that way. So for 2019-20 budget reductions, the board authorized approximately $1,046,000 in budget cuts. And so I wanted to give you an update on what we've done so far. We've combined the special education and the student services departments, and we eliminated one director position, savings of about $210,000. Now this is total monies, not just salary. Added on here, this was not part of the board approved, but you just heard it, the reduction of the HR director to HR coordinator, savings of about $50,000. We eliminated the instructional technology network administrator position, $166,000, and we eliminated a secretary to educational services position, $69,000. So the total budget adjustments there for district office personnel is another $497,000. School site personnel for reductions, we've eliminated the Albany High School vice principal position. We have, and this is a portion of the library text because some of it was funded by school care this year. So we looked at the portion that is not funded, which is $36,000, and then elimination of one HS clerical position at $37,000. This is, it's not a full-time position. Total budget adjustments of $253,000. Non-personnel related, phasing out the teacher MacBooks and phasing in Chromebooks, it's projected at $40,000. This is in progress, so this has not happened yet. Materials and supplies, we reduced $106,275, and you can see the breakdown there. Reduced professional development workshops and more materials and supplies, that's $200,000. And the travel and conferencing, eliminating that for next year. There's no dollar amount because we don't know at this time how much is reduced. We did reduce some travel and conferences this year, but not all. There are some things that we needed to have. So the budget adjustments for that was $346,275. So in summary, the board approved reductions of $1,046,275. In addition to those reductions, we've made $50,000 savings with the HR director. We've increased class size a little bit in elementary. We will have to have some combo classes. That was equivalent to 2 FTE, which is a savings of about $150,000. And then we believe that we can get some supplemental early retirement program savings of $152,000. So it ends up being the total planned reductions are about $1,398,275. And so that is where we are at as of today. And I'm open for any board questions. Wanted to put this as part of my superintendent's report. Thank you.
Do we have news on the governor's budget?
Thank you. I think I'll let our CBO add more to this. I will tell you that what I'm hearing is not a huge adjustment in additional revenues. What I am seeing is a little bit in the area of early childhood education. There is a special education bill that has moved on to the next phase. I don't know how far it's gone beyond that. The Morisuchi bill has got out of the Education Committee and has moved on. And it bears watching. There is a national bill to increase funding for IDEA. This is a bill that comes forth every year, and up until this year has not ever passed. However, that may change this year. And I'll turn it over to our CBO to talk about the rest of this.
So COLA went down a little, and STARS rate also went down, so it's going to be a pretty much wash. So I don't see a lot of impact in our general fund, and we will find out more next week, Monday, when we are going to Sacramento.
Thank you. Any board questions? That moves us to board updates.
Well, I am excited to announce that the 4th grade class at Marin will be headed to Point Bonita tomorrow morning. So we'll be there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So I'm really excited about that. It's my daughter's first overnight kind of field trip, so she's really excited. She's been packing for like 3 weeks. So that's my report.
I think the students would have mentioned this, but next Wednesday, May 22nd, in Sacramento, there will, I trust, be an enormous rally in demanding better funding for public education to the state legislature and governor. And I unfortunately will be in Los Angeles, which is very far away from Sacramento, but I know that many of our teachers and students, I know that Berkeley High expects a good percentage of its students to be on buses going to Sacramento. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how our students participate and our teachers, and hope that people, if they can't go themselves, will help support that effort. Because we desperately need more funding for K-12 education in California.
I would just want to add that I will be driving next Wednesday to Sacramento, so if any of you would like to accompany me, I'd love the company. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
May I add one more thing? Just as, I know we don't have a student board member report, but on Thursday, the playground pop-up music will be coming to Ocean View, and that is in direct, it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Neri McIntyre to bring this to us. So it is going to be, I believe, at 9:45 at Ocean View. Did I get that correct? So thank you.
I have just a few things to add. Last week, we had actually it was on May 1st, we had the final walkthrough for the AMS Annex. So they're still over there doing the landscaping, planting trees and stuff, and we still have a fence to build to protect the neighbors' privacy. But it's pretty much finished, and I believe that we're going to be having an open house and a ribbon cutting on Saturday, June 8th, to let.
Sorry. What's it? Saturday, June 1st.
June 1st to the 5th.
I said June 1st. Is it June 8th?
We had to move it to June 8th.
There were a few more things that needed to get done. Yeah, it's June. It's going to be June 8th. We'll put it out officially, but I wanted to give everybody here a heads up because we want to see everybody there. So it's the community that passed the bonds that paid for this new school, and we want everybody to see the facilities that we'll have for educating the kids. So in addition to that, I wanted to mention, there was something else. Okay. I think I'm gonna stop it right there. That's enough. And
Coachella is Saturday.
that was it. Okay, yes.
Saturday afternoon, come buy food and other stuff to support the middle school.
I knew there was something. Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Tickets at Brown Paper Tickets. Check your email.
What's the play topic?
Once on this island.
Thank you.
There you go. And the costumes look fantastic. Yeah. Okay. That's all for our reports. Now that moves to persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. So please fill out a speaker form, if you will, and hand it to Julie.
Good evening, Superintendent Williams, President Tuchain, Vice President Doss, members, trustees. Normally I would greet the students, but they are not here. Neri Castillo McIntyre, I'm the father of India McIntyre, a first grader in the special education program at Ocean View. And I'm sorry to see you go. We had we spent some time together. I'm not even sure if we're allowed to. Yeah, okay. Anyway, but amidst all these changes, and I wish I had known ahead of time that Cheryl was leaving too, but I wanted to recognize one of the staff members at AUSD who has made a significant difference, not only in my daughter's and my wife's and my life, but in that of other students in the special education program, and that's Brian Biggs. He's a program specialist in the special education department, who's moving on to be, I believe, I'm not exactly sure, the director of special education at another institution. But in the limited time that we've had to spend with him, he has shown himself to be very much on team student. He's not on team school district or team parents. He's very much in team student. And for some reason, I am reminded of Prince. At the time that he passed away, someone made a comment about how he delivered one of the best performances in halftime history in Super Bowl. And the reason was that the person who was quoted said, he doesn't phone it in. He takes his performances very seriously, and if he's supposed to perform for just 15 minutes somewhere, he'll really perform. And that's the same case with Brian Biggs. Even though he's moving on to a different position, he's not phoning it in the last days or months on the job. And in fact, he was today joining a field trip that my wife organized to visit the tackle program at Oakland Unified. That is the adaptive communication for students in special education. And he was really excited about the possibilities that opens for Albany if Albany were to adopt that same program. So their gain is our loss, and I hope that maybe sometime in the future AUSD can manage to bring him back. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say just two things. You know, if you have a written letter and if Julie has it, then that will be printed in its entirety in the minutes of this meeting. So you don't have to speak an entire letter to get it included in the minutes. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that the board is not legally allowed to comment on matters that are not on the agenda. So with that, I welcome you to the podium.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dante Mosley. I appreciate y'all listening to me right now. A little nervous, first time doing this. Not my real thing. I'm more of a person like do their job, and that's it. That's my main thing. Love my kids. Love working with kids I work with, and I just love my job. With that being said, good evening, members of the board, and everyone here in attendance. Tonight, my name is Dante Mosley. I've been working here since wow, sorry. A little emotional right now, so. Look, I've been going to school since '95. I graduated around the time. I've been working for about 7 years. So I've been through the ringer of the school. I love this district, so I came back to this district. I just want to bring something to attention that you guys should really look into how your criteria, your process of students and of employees that go here. I think there could be some changes, and they really need to be looked at from different angles in different ways, because I feel like it's not really an open process and always accurate. So I thank you for your time, and I really appreciate the response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good evening. Thanks, everyone. So my name is Richard Ventura Usman. I've been working here for 17 years. I'm the special day class teacher at Albany High School. I've worked with Dante for most of the years that he's worked here in the district, so we know each other pretty well. I'm here to ask you to support Dante's request to enroll his children in our district. As per my email, I hope you guys got it, I'm appealing to your sense of fairness and equity. I'm asking that you look into the situation beyond just sort of a cursory yes, no, question and answer session, and really look into the details of the case. because there's a lot to be discovered, I think, if you do that. He has now been denied twice. He's currently waitlisted and has received no information as to how, why those decisions have been made. I think that's really unfortunate. And right now, you know, we're looking at preserving financial capital. I'd like to remind us that, of course, for next week in terms of our classified employees, I'd like to remind us that human capital is equally, if not more important, in the scheme of things. And to quote Richard Branson, who knew you'd find words of wisdom from Richard Branson, but hey, train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to, take care of your employees, and they will take care of your business. It's as simple as that. Loyal employees are assets, not liabilities. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you both. That brings us to our SELPA report.
Thank you, President Trutane, members of the board. I actually would like to turn this, I was going to turn it to Diane Marie, but nope. Katie Babcock, okay. Every year, we do a SELPA report, and that is so the board knows what is happening in the SELPA. There are 5 districts in our SELPA. Okay, I hope I got this right. Albany, Alameda, Emory, Piedmont, and Berkeley. And so we turn this over to Diane Marie, who will introduce this item. Thank you.
And actually, tonight's report is at the request of the board. In September or sometime in the fall, I can't remember exactly which month, but I think it was September, maybe October, the Board of Education appointed Kathleen Marte as the parent representative for Albany on the North Region SELPA, and SELPA is Special Education Local Plan Area, our Community Advisory Committee. And she was the first parent rep to be board appointed. And at that time, the board asked that Kathleen come back and provide an update of the CAC, the Community Advisory Committee's work this year. So we put that in May because they just had their last meeting, and it was a planning meeting for next year. So Kathleen Marte is going to give a report on the Community Advisory Committee for the North Region SELPA.
Good evening. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight, and good evening to the audience. I am the mother of Leo Marte, who is an 8th grader at the middle school. I usually bring him to the board meeting. You might remember him from the coffee cart presentation. I didn't bring him tonight because he was rehearsing for the musical, so I hope you guys go see it. It's awesome. He's been really enjoying that. I've been pretty a solid member of this committee for 2 years now, and we have a core group of parents, mostly from Albany, Alameda, and Berkeley. I want to talk about what we discussed, what we learned at the meetings, and also last night we talked a little bit about feedback for the districts, sort of feedback recommendations. So there's 6 meetings, and the first meeting we sort of learn about how the functions of the CAC, and then we plan, and the parents get to choose topics. The 4 topics we chose was 1, parent participation in the IEP meeting, and for each topic we have specialists come and present. We had, for example, 1 year a specialist from Dredif. This year we had someone come from Alameda County Behavioral Health. Another evening, we had a meeting by Dale Law Firm to explain financial planning for special needs. So we learned, for example, how to create a special needs trust fund. I had never even heard of it. I didn't even know what it was. And now I've created it for one day. If I have money, I have that in place. So then another evening, we did 2 evenings on transitions. Transitions are really important. So one was transition to elementary school and transition to middle school. And the other evening was the transition to high school and the adult transition programs. And we had administrators from 4 out of the 5 districts present, and we got to learn about what those transition programs looked like. So these were all very informative. You learn a lot, and I'm really grateful for these presentations. There was also a statewide legislative info sharing day where 3 parents from the CAC and 3 special ed administrators from the SELPA participated, and they went to share information and testimonials regarding state special ed funding, family empowerment centers, and the special ed teacher shortage. I didn't get the opportunity to go, but I really appreciate that it was offered to me. They would pay for my train ticket and lunch and whatnot, but I heard it was very informative. One area of the topics I wanted to touch on was that there's a special education teacher shortage, and I know that districts are trying to save money right now, so I know it's very difficult, but one recommendation or one thing I would want the board to consider is that Albany Unified has a salary cap at 6 years, and I personally know a very strong special ed teacher from Berkeley Unified who wants and is considering coming to Albany Unified and was interviewed, was offered a job, and is probably not going to accept the job because of this. One of the main reasons is this salary cap. I am a teacher myself for Berkeley Unified. I am an ELD specialist for Thousand Oaks Elementary. I love my work. I'm passionate. I've looked at Albany Unified and haven't quite seen a position open, but on top of that, I would have to take $10,000 or more salary cut to come to the school district. So it's something to consider. I know that you have some special ed teachers retiring, so maybe you could look into that. Berkeley Unified currently has a salary cap at 12 years. So, yeah, 12 years. And right in the contract negotiations, they're looking at doing away with the salary cap altogether. So it's something to consider. Now, in terms of last night, we sat the committee and we talked about sort of the feedback. And because it's a SELPA and school districts share students and there's commonalities, we each went around and sort of shared what area we thought we would like to see each school district to work on improving. And I want to give it a little sort of personal, to make it more engaging and real and helpful. So my son, we lived in Richmond, and my son was in West Contra Costa when he was in kindergarten. And they determined the best program for him was in Pinole. And so at 5 years old, he had to go, he was the first to be picked up in the bus, so he had to ride the bus for an hour to Pinole and then an hour home. And he was in a special day class 100% of the time. And they said that the time he was mainstream was in recess, but he didn't play with the other children because he didn't know the other children. So I moved to Albany Unified for the schools. And I have been overall very happy and very grateful. Definitely has a huge improvement on least restrictive environment. And, first I had to work hard. He was in a special day class 40% of the time. No, 60% of the time, and mainstream 40% of the time, and he didn't have an aide at first, and that was difficult because the mainstreaming wasn't really working, so I had to push and advocate for my son to get an aide to support to make it successful in the mainstreaming time. And then since that, it's been really wonderful. It's taken some years, but he's developed a lot of friendships both in the special day classroom and typical children. He's been able to participate completely in the drama program, has been in the musical each year. And he walks through communities and people are like, hi Leo, and it's so wonderful, and I'm so, so grateful. So I just wanted to share that. So those are all the pluses that I can share. And then there was another Albany parent who shared that she's also very happy with the teachers and staff, and I can say from the different specialists, like Nancy Henderson, adaptive PE, and the occupational therapists and the special ed teachers, really wonderful, wonderful teachers. One thing an Albany parent shared that I would agree with is that the team is often great at coming up with really good IEP goals, but sometimes there's a little bit of, as one parent put it, accountability for the curriculum. So it's basically ensuring that students are progressing on the IEP goals? Like, what is the curriculum to make sure that they are able to progress on these goals? Because sometimes when a student with special needs is not meeting their goals, the team can just say, oh, well, they have special needs, and that's why they're not meeting their goals. But actually, sometimes that the specialized academic instruction is not appropriate or not, doesn't have a scope and sequence. And so that is something that it's difficult, you know, because it's an individual education plan. So I understand that it's challenging for the district, but it's something really to be aware of and be conscientious of, that there's that accountability for curriculum that's appropriate. In Alameda, one parent said that she's thought that teaching time management and executive functioning skills early on and throughout children's career is very important, and we all agreed to that. One big issue is the communication. So the CAC attendees is kind of small. We would like to see more parents there, and we don't know what's happening with the communication from like the special ed directors or the case managers to the parents or the outreach. I know it's difficult to get parents to come to meetings. As a teacher myself, I hold ELAC meetings, and I know it's a challenge, but communication can always be improved, and also what resources are available to parents. Then in Berkeley, one parent was talking about, we were all talking about the IA training, and I know that this year the school district has had a lot of training for the instructional assistants, but it's also important to provide the collaboration time with the classroom teacher. And it's tricky, you know, modifying the curriculum so that the student actually truly participates, and it's not, I have seen IAs kind of just doing the work so they can like check off, okay, this student did this project, and you know, to provide the least restrictive environment, it's a tricky line, having a person help but not helping too much, and it does take a lot of training and collaboration. And then also, we talked about the training for the general ed teacher to modify the curriculum. It's my understanding is that before 2016, that it wasn't part of the general ed teacher's coursework, and so that general ed teachers might benefit from more training on how to ensure that their students are receiving access to the curriculum. Let's see, so that's generally what I wanted to share. I want to say that I always speak highly of Albany Unified, and I'm very grateful. I have the experience. I used to work for Alameda Unified, so my son was in West Contra Costa. I work for Berkeley now. I used to work for Alameda, and my son has been in 2 districts, and I have to say I always speak very highly of Albany Unified, and I'm very grateful. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Actually,
Thank you. Open it to the board.
does anybody want to go first? Oh, all right. Thank you for sharing your story and going over this with us. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to ask a question, if you don't mind.
Please.
So you said that you had a decision to make with your son, and so the decision that you made was to move from Richmond to Albany so that your son could go to school?
For the schools, yes.
And so was it easy to move to Albany and find a place here? Or?
Oh, no, because, you know, even though he didn't have that many friends, you still think, you know, it's going to be a whole new community, and it sounds good in Albany Unified, but maybe it's not as good as it sounds, and oh no, it was very scary. I was scared, but I took the chance, and I'm really glad I did. I've always been very grateful. I mean, the long story is actually that I bought a house at the top of the market. It crashed, the whole thing, foreclosure. So you know what they say, you know, had lemons and made lemonade. I'm like, okay, the house is foreclosing. We don't have to stay in Richmond anymore. Let's move to Albany.
So then you moved to Albany and you bought a house here.
No, rent. I'm still renting. But
Was it easy to find that apartment?
no, but I was lucky.
So they have this rule, and I'm really happy that you came up here. They have this rule that we can't comment on certain things, the board members can't comment, when people speak during certain times. So I apologize, but I'm using this opportunity to kind of speak to kind of the larger thing, which is you saw that Albany was going to provide your son with the education that you felt like he needed. So you moved here.
Yes.
And you were able to do that. And there are some families that are not able to just pack up. And, I mean, it's a blessing that you were able to do it, and I'm happy you're here, and I'm happy that we were able to serve your son. And I want to give everybody, every parent that recognizes that Albany is the place for their child, I want to give everybody that opportunity. I want to make sure that the board does everything that they can in order to give every parent that opportunity, especially if that parent goes through the process and fills out the paperwork and does everything that they're supposed to do, trying to be the best parent that they could be. We owe it to them to be the district for them. So I appreciate, again, for you sharing your story.
I know a lot about that issue also. Sometimes we want to attract diversity, maybe English language learners or different diversity, and it's good to have different options open for families not actually in Albany. I would agree.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd just like to know, it sounds like you learned a lot and met people from around. I'd be interested in hearing more about what you learned about other districts doing that might be ideas that we want to incorporate, or I can't pick your brain for 2 hours, but it would be helpful for us, I think, to hear more about, because we don't get the chance to go to other districts, to hear a little more about those conversations.
Right. Well, Berkeley Unified has the high emphasis on inclusion, and we all want least restrictive environment for our students. And so I really appreciate that they value that. And the same thing, I don't think any district should have like a cookie cutter approach. So my son, he right now, he's in a special day class part of the time, and he is in mainstream part of the time, and he's moving on to the high school. And, at the high school, the special day class has a heavy emphasis on life skills. And I don't think my son, I want him to have a heavy emphasis on life skills. I still want him to have academics and rigor. And so my point is that it's good if the district can, as much as possible, have sort of like hybrid programs. A child could spend part of the day in a special day class, part of the day mainstream, maybe part of the day in resource, whatever, because it's an individualized education plan. And you need to have, IEP goals that are, have high expectations. They're appropriately challenging. Because sometimes some of the students, they're not learning as much as they could. And like I said earlier, you could think, well, they're special needs, but really it's because we haven't found quite the most appropriate program. And I understand it can be really challenging. I don't know if that's quite answering your question, but overall I would just say, as much as possible, really make a program that fits to the child's needs.
Yeah, the board appoints several people to various committees, and I think we've always said, we want you to come back and report, and you're one of the few that has, and I've found this really valuable, and the fact that we have somebody, a connection now, that's hearing about what's going on throughout our whole local area is very valuable. So I hope that you can continue, and I look forward to hearing from you next year.
Okay, now I know that next time maybe I'll prepare something and submit it so you can have it in the minutes for you.
Great.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That brings us to L, review and action. Number 1, human resources.
Thank you, President Trutain. I'm going to turn this over to Cheryl Cotton, our Director of Human Resources, for this item on the reduction of classified school services. Ms. Cotton.
Hello, Board. I am speaking to you this evening about a resolution that's in our board packet about our reduction of classified services. The board will need to take action on the layoffs of the positions that are listed. There are a total of 4.92 FTE to be reduced. We have listed our CSEA members here, our library technician positions totaling 2.5 FTE. Those are categorical funded positions that will, again, year by year, we're not certain about the funding that's available for them. It's the same situation for our paraeducator positions. There's 2 positions for a total of 0.89 FTE. As well as our athletic clerk that is funded as well, 0.73 FTE, and those are again all categorical funds. We are also laying off a Secretary 2 position at the high school, and that is, as Superintendent Williams has reported, a budget reduction for our district.
Thank you, Director Cotton. Can you comment if some of these positions have been paid for in the past by our fundraising organizations and might be paid for that way in the future?
And they may. I know that our library technician positions, those positions have come back just about every year. They're funded through school care, most of them. There is a portion of the FTE that is covered by our general fund, however, and that was included in Superintendent Williams' report. Our paraeducator positions, those are site-funded positions. I believe each year principals will look and figure out what they have available to support intervention at their school sites. It's not consistent from year to year, and it's again dependent on funding that's available, as well as the athletic clerk position that is funded by, I believe, our boosters.
The boosters?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions from the board? May I have a motion?
I move to approve the resolution 2018-19-16 on reduction of classified school services.
I second that. I believe that we need a roll call.
President Trutain,
Aye.
Vice President Doss,
Aye.
Trustee Clark,
Abstain.
Trustee Hinckley,
Aye.
Trustee Duran.
Yes.
Thank you, Director Khan.
Thank you.
That moves us to the next item. Now is the time for the public hearing on the initial proposal for negotiations between the Albany Unified School District and California School Employees Association for the 2019-2022 contract term. Under Government Code Section 3547A, the board must hold a hearing regarding initial proposals by exclusive representatives and by public school employers, which relate to matters within the scope of representation. The board will now hear public comment on CSEA's initial proposal to the district as presented to the board on February 12, 2019. Copies of CSEA's proposal are available at the back table and online in the February 12th board packet. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board. I welcome speakers to come forward.
Just, you have to open the hearing.
I open the hearing. Okay. Having heard all public comment, this hearing is now closed. Or, sorry, I will amend that slightly. Having determined that there is no public comment, this hearing is now closed. Any change in mind? Is there a motion to adopt the district's initial proposal for negotiations to the California School Employees Association? Okay. I need to. Okay. I'm sorry, I have to backtrack a little bit. This is a legal thing, and it must be done absolutely properly, and I missed a sentence. So each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board. The board will now hear public comment on the district's initial proposal as presented to the board. Okay. Now, having determined that there is no public comment, this hearing is now closed. Is there a motion to adopt the district's initial proposal for negotiations to the California School Employees Association for the 2019 through 2022 contract? I will so move.
I second.
Do we need a roll call, or can we just? Okay, we'll ask for a roll call, please, Julie.
President Trutain,
Aye.
Vice President Doss,
Aye.
Board Member Clark,
Aye.
Board Member Hinckley,
Aye.
Board Member Duran.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, that moves us to our review and action item number 2, business services, Albany Children's Center preschool rate adjustment.
Thank you, President Trutain. The purpose of this item is for the board to review and approve the adjustment of the AUSD preschool rates starting for the 2019-20 school year. I'm going to turn this over to our Chief Business Official, Jackie Kim.
Thank you. This item is to review and approve the adjustment in preschool rates starting 2019-20. And I'd like to show you maybe the current rate for now. So the increase in the preschool rate is necessary because we will have to align with our neighborhood programs, and also we can balance the preschool budget, and also we can.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there, hold on, is there a way to dim these lights just about halfway so that everybody can see? There's a glare. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think, is that better for the board?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So as you can see, sorry, now I can see better too. So Albany Children's Center, we are right here, 1250, and this is other neighborhood preschool programs. So this is going to align with other neighboring programs and to balance the preschool budget and also to maintain highly qualified staff as we have, and also align with the cost increase due to health and welfare benefits and the retirement cost. And this was adjusted in May 2016, which is about 3 years ago. So this is really the time for us to reconsider our rate. And it will be about so the staff is proposing about, not about, but $1,450, which is $200 up a month. That will give Albany Children's Center about $38,000 extra revenues annually. Any questions?
So for this is only for the Albany Children's Center, not the Albany Co-op, right?
So Albany Children's Center has two programs. One is preschool program, one is after school programs, and this is just for the preschool program before the school age.
I have one comment. My kids went to Albany Preschool Cooperative, 3 lines up from the bottom, and I checked on their website today, and the amount of monthly tuition that's listed there includes that a parent work there 1 day a week. It's a cooperative. And so that the cost is lower at a cooperative because you contribute to the labor. You are part of the staff, sort of. And I also checked for the El Cerrito Co-op, ECPC, and they actually listed a figure for if you don't want to work there and put in the time, you would actually pay an additional $260 per month. So that would bring their monthly tuition, which is more comparable, up to $1,635 a month.
And also the including lunch. You can also see.
Right.
Well, my main comment is I'm shocked at how much more expensive preschool is than when my kids were in preschool. I guess I'd like to just ask a couple of questions that I know the answer to because I already asked
Sure.
you. But I think it would be helpful just to have them out. So there's 72 families in the preschool, only 16 of them are paying the full cost. 56 are subsidized, and this increase would not affect subsidized families at all.
That is
Only
correct.
those 16 families that are paying full price. And there's no plan right now to increase the rates of the before and after school program, but they all are all part of the same budget, the ACC budget, is that right?
So ACC has two programs. So
Does it sort of balance the preschool by
Right.
itself and then balance?
that's
the-
correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
this increase is to prevent a deficit in the preschool
Preschool,
program?
that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And this is the first increase since 2016, was that right?
Yes, May 2016.
I guess my last comment is just $200 is a big jump for families. So I understand the situation we're in. I just want to, this is a lot of pain already, and $200 a month is a lot of money. I just want to recognize that's a big lift for family to absorb.
Right.
But I understand the situation you're in.
Couple questions. One would be, what happens if we don't increase it? And another question, is it the same amount for residents of Albany versus people who are not residents, or is it the same amount regardless?
Let's see. I can answer the first question, but second question I can get back to you.
Okay.
There's more of the program questions that I will have to check with the director at ACC. But first question, what if we don't increase? So currently the preschool is actually operating net deficit, meaning when we have additional revenues or net incomes in after-school programs, that is subsidizing the preschool programs. So if we can increase this preschool program, then we will have more money reserved for our after-school program students.
Okay, so since you're doing research on the other question, if you could also, I'd like to know if we increased it by 100 versus 200, or if maybe if you're a resident, it would be 100, and if a non-resident, it would be like 200. Like if we could do it that way, just because I mean, you're already paying the high property tax if you live in Albany, and then if you happen to have a TK student or a kindergarten student, which usually siblings are close in age, then you're paying an extra $200 here, but then also paying for the additional cost for before and after school care because of the change. So I'd like to see other options than just raising it by $200.
Sure, but currently there's no increase in the after-school programs, and if we can increase the preschool tuitions, that means we can really utilize our after-school programs. So our after-school program students will get those benefits from,
Oh, okay.
right? Because currently we are pulling money from after-school programs and putting into our preschool programs.
Oh, because it's running at a deficit.
Yes, correct. So if we charge less for Albany resident, I'm not sure how it works now, but if we have less income, that means we will have to have a more burden for our after-school programs. Right?
No, that makes sense. You're a rock star, Jackie. I'm not going to doubt any of your numbers.
It just seems that it is a hard time to ask parents to give more money. On the other hand, the question that you drew out, Brian, is that it's kind of like taking from Paul to give to Peter, or Juanita to give to Maria, in terms of it's going to be shared pain, or, with families, it appears. So.
Is there a motion?
I will move to, where's the heading of, move to approve the proposal to increase preschool tuition for next year at Albany Children's Center.
I second.
All in favor?
Wait. So we're gonna vote on it before she gets a chance to answer my other question?
The different tuitions for Albany resident, non-resident.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to answer before I vote.
It is a review and action item.
Right. That's something that I will have to check in with our director at our Albany Children's Center. I do not have.
About
Yeah.
they pay the same tuition?
Can we just table this until I get an answer?
All right.
So right now, it's a review in action. You have a motion to approve, and then you have a second. So that is what's on the table now. So if it doesn't carry, then you can make a motion. Another way that you might want to, and I may have to check my book here, you can ask the person who made the motion if she's willing to withdraw the motion so that you can make a motion to table. But right now, what's on the floor is a motion and a second.
So we have to follow through with that motion unless the person that originally gave it takes it back. I understand.
So they don't charge different rates for Albany residents versus non-residents. That doesn't answer your question about whether we could do that. But right now, everyone pays the same rate for the preschool.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that would prohibit you from doing that, but I believe Jackie explained that if you did that, then there would be
Less income
there'd be
for
less income.
us, the children's center. That means more burden for the preschool age programs.
But less burden on the residents of Albany.
Right. So you're right. Like, yes. Trustee Duran mentioned which part of the money is shifting.
The pot that we ask for when we're trying to pass bonds. We reach out to the community time and time again, and we ask them for this, and we ask them for that, and please pay more money for this, and please pay more money for that. And so I think that we just owe the community the time to see if, or just another pay more for this. I mean, it just seems, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for everybody. So if you want to do the motion, and we just keep throwing more bills at them, and we just have, I just think it's important to be sensitive to that and to take that into consideration before we ask people to pay more money for things. When children are this young, sometimes parents are still kind of adjusting to having kids, and things are coming up, and there's a lot of things happening. And so I think we need to take that into consideration when we're talking about raising their tuition. I mean, it's already expensive.
Brian, a question to you really is your concern or issue, or we should wait till we find out if it's possible to raise the fee for out-of-city residents? Is that really what you're looking for at this time?
Yeah, I mean, I could give an example. So if you sign up for a program in the UC Village, like if you sign up for a camp, if you live in the village, or you pay less than if somebody else wants to participate in the program. You still get to participate, but you pay less if you are, a resident. If you go to Disneyland, if you live in LA, you pay less than if you're coming from out of state.
Okay, but one consideration is not that if there's maybe working parents that work in Albany and they bring their kids from Oakland or from Richmond, where we can kind of guesstimate that the wages or the fact that these parents may not be able to live in Albany because they can't afford it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, they live where they can afford it. And so for them, it's still going to be a painful increase, regardless of whether they're doing it by themselves or whether they're doing it along with other Albany parents.
I like your point, and I think it's a good one. So really, we should look at maybe making this 125 versus 200.
Actually, I have a really good point here. I was
Okay.
reading this. Okay, so this is here. I can read this up. Services are available for children of Albany residents. Non-residents are accepted after all Albany residents have been served. And I know I was on a waiting list for 8 months and I never got to it. And I know our preschool has a long waiting list. That means really we are serving Albany residents for now, because the rest of them, even I was an I am Albany resident, but I was still on a waiting list. So currently I can really say we are serving only the Albany residents because there is a long waiting list.
Oh, because there's already a way. Okay.
There is
Okay.
a priority there.
I guess to that point, though, Brian, now that you raise the next point, which is if we would lower the fee 100, 150, whatever, do you see, Ms. Kim, that after-school care costs might still have to go up? But if it's 200, they will not go up. Is that already clear that they will not be going up next year?
Right, that is clear from the Albany Children's Center director that she will not increase the after-school program fees.
If it's 200. Oh, because so basically you already did the numbers, and basically 200 gets them out of where they are versus, I mean, because even if it was 180, if that took us.
It might work, actually. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but when I speak to the director, that was good number that she can manage her program, balancing those programs.
I would just like to see a little bit more on if that number could be lower. Even if it's $20, that's $20 more that the families will have to spend on something else. So like I said, I can't make you take back your motions there, and I know that we have other things, but even if
I might be able to help you.
okay.
I'm not the board's parliamentarian, so I'm offering this as a suggestion. If Board Member Hinckley would be willing to adjust your motion to maybe include Vice President Doss's numbers. You see what I'm saying? If you're willing to amend that, but then we'd have to have another second. You understand what I'm saying? So right now you have you've made a motion to accept the preschool rate adjustments as is listed here in the board packet, which has been seconded by Clementina Duran. You do, I believe, have the option to amend your motion and maybe make, just by example, make the motion to approve, but not with the 200 numbers, maybe at the 180 numbers, if that is what you were asking. Otherwise, I think what you need to do is after discussion is over, you would need to take a vote, and then if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, then you can make another motion. I hope I did not confuse the board.
I would say a few words. It's so far below market rate as it is and it will still be well below market rate, even with the increase. And I think that, given that we haven't seen an increase since 2016 and it's 2019, I don't think the ACC likes to have to print up all their materials, again, every year, change rates every year. So for that reason, I would continue to support the rate increase as presented here.
I mean, as I said before, it's a big jump, but we have staff that calculated what amount was necessary to avoid continuing to use the after-school and before-school program to subsidize the preschool, and I support that amount.
So, Board, I think we need to, let's ask for a roll call.
Can I pull my second? Can I pull my second?
I don't see why not. I'm looking at Robert's Rules of Order. It does not say anything about pulling your second. It does say that a member may amend a motion. You can move that the motion be amended, but it would have to be approved by a majority of the board to approve the amendment. So I guess if you want, I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know if you can or cannot. I would assume if the board was in agreement or you wanted to pull it, you could say you want to pull it.
Well, I'm wondering if, Sarah, you would accept a little change like that the director could relook at the figures and see if anywhere between the range of, say, 175 to 200, if she would be able to lower the 200 to maybe 175.
Can we give that kind of range?
So I can answer. So currently, let's see. The preschool deficit is about 140,000. So we can lower. It's just that our deficit will stay about the same then. So that's right. So this increase of $200 is really to reduce the deficit in preschool programs. So it will not cover $140,000 of deficit, even with the $200 increase.
So whatever we're not charging the preschool families, will eventually be charging the before and after school families.
That is correct. That's what is happening at the moment.
Eventually, meaning like?
Now, effectively, I guess is what I meant to say. Because the money comes from the same place. So if we don't ask the preschool families to absorb some of that cost, by de facto, it gets built into the cost structure of before and after school.
Right, because Albany Children's Center need to stand self-funded because general fund cannot pay for the Albany Children's Center.
But it was calculated so the 200 a month is the minimum that is required in order to stay fiscally sound, for their program to stay fiscally sound?
No, because, well, it's because the deficit is already 140,000. So that 200 is something that when we look at the neighboring programs, it's more of the reasonable amount that the Children's Center Director proposed. And it's going to help the net deficit by 38,000.
But it won't eliminate it.
Right.
If it doesn't eliminate it, then the next move is we're going to have a proposal to increase after-school costs?
Currently, after-school program is generating profits, net income that it can cover the preschool programs. So that's why, since we are making net income in after-school programs, that Children's Center does not plan to increase the after-school program. So that is not in the plan, increasing the after-school program fees.
So what I'm hearing is that to avoid having the before and after school programs I got tongue-tied. Okay, so the preschool program needs to support more of its own costs.
Correct.
So that it doesn't need to be as subsidized by the before and after care.
That is correct. And also, director is planning a lot of other things with the temporary housing. We'll have to put more staff, more hours, so that is all associated with those increases.
Are you going to amend the motion, or should we just vote what was on the table?
Well, I don't want to force her into a second of a
Well,
motion she doesn't support anymore.
I'll second it. We're just going in circles here. I mean, either we support it or we don't.
Okay, Ms. Shen, the roll call, please.
This is a motion to approve the rate
The
adjustment.
$200 rate increase.
Okay. President Trutain,
Aye.
Vice President Doss,
Nay.
Trustee Clark,
Yes?
Trustee Hinckley,
Aye.
Trustee Duran.
Yes.
Can we make sure that the minutes reflect that Member Clementina Duran asked to rescind her vote, and then Member Clark agreed to second the motion?
Absolutely.
Okay, and that moves us to M, review and discussion items. The number one item is business services, the Albany Unified School District Budget Reserve Practice.
Thank you. I'll turn this over to our Chief Business Official, Ms. Kim.
Thank you. This item is to review and discuss our 9% budget reserve practice previously adopted by the board, and I can maybe briefly explain about these items. So in the past, Albany had a good reserve, about even 18%. See, this is our historical data, as you can see. So when we had a great recession at Albany, we didn't have to borrow money, and we didn't have to have a furlough days. So we were very healthy. And currently, we have now about 11%. And when you can see next 3 years, we are having about 8.9, 4.9, and it's about 0%. So this item was brought to the board to discuss our 9% reserve policy, or the practice. And a few things that we can notice is this: our current 9% reserve policy, or the practice, what this does is it addresses unexpected costs. For example, we need to fix our fire alarm system at Albany High School, and we had a gas leak in Ocean View about a year ago, and litigations. So those are something that we haven't expected, and it happened. And when we have a healthy reserve, we can address those expenditure items, and we have more time to think of our cuts in the future. Because currently, when we have those big items are expensed, now, okay, where do we find the money to cover that? Cover the expenditures. So this is another reason that we can do, we can think of. And also, say for the large purchases, meaning, for example, I know we talked about Albany Middle School furnitures, and that is something that we like to actually have a new furnitures for Albany Middle School, not for the annex, but for the current schools, because the desks and chairs are really outdated and obsolete. And also, for example, what if we have kitchen refrigerators or freezer malfunction? And I know that our food program is self-funded currently, but don't have a lot of reserve. It really barely meets their reserves. So if things break down in the kitchen areas, then the general fund has to buy like refrigerator right away. So those are the reasons that why we want to keep the 9% reserve. And also, it, as I said earlier, it ensures the time needed to the state holders, because our budget advisory committee mentioned earlier at last meeting that don't have enough time to address a lot of items. 'Cause we wish that we have a more time to consider, and that's something that our reserve can do. Reserve will buy us some time to have a budget reductions during this time. And it's open to board discussion now.
Would you be able to tell us, Ms. Kim, a 3%, from a 9 to a low of 3%, which is the minimal we need? 3%, I've heard you say that it's about a month's worth of income?
No, the 9% is about 1 month operating expenditures.
And 3% is a 1 week? Is it 1 week?
Right.
Oh, well, more or less, okay.
Little more than
Okay,
that.
and I guess then my question is, how much money is that, say a 3% reserve?
3% for Albany is about 1,400,000. And it was really interesting to see, even though it seems really difficult to keep the 9%, but this data just came in March 2019. The most recent unaudited actual shows that Unified School District actually have about 17% in California. It seems really high, but this is the data that we have from the state.
I think it masks a larger issue, though, which is that those are general fund balances in 2017-18 for districts that are almost entirely running structural deficits and are going to be down below, well below that within a couple of years. So it doesn't represent a reserve that those districts are maintaining. I would expect
Right.
even for 18-19, those percentages have probably dropped
Right.
50%.
Right.
So this has come up like 3 times, 4 times since I've been on the board. It's currently our policy, right, or our resolution, right?
Actually, clarification, it is not a policy nor a resolution. When we looked back into the original time this was brought before the board, there was no board policy change, and there was no actual resolution. It was an agreement by the board that gave direction to Alan Gard.
So then why does the county, when they send us stuff, when they look at our budget and keep saying whatever terminology they use? I mean, let's just be realistic. I don't want to talk about this a lot. 3% is what reserves by the state, or 3% is what was required by the state. We're not going to be anywhere near 9 for many, many years. So like, what do you want from the board? To make it a policy?
No.
So what are we discussing this for? I mean, I want to be here till 10:30, 11 o'clock again.
We believed that it was an agenda item that you wanted us to discuss.
Recently?
No, you've been asking for it for a long time, and we've been trying to fit it on
Because
agenda.
it was obvious that it wasn't being.
I agree with you.
If you thought it was for me, then I'll just say, let's just go on to the next item then.
Well, but what you said, I think, is very true. I mean, clearly from our budget, it's going to be, I can't see any time in the future when we're going to be at a 9% reserve. I mean, we can't continue running the school district and achieve a 9% reserve. I mean, we're dropping quickly down through our reserve fund, and we're having trouble staying afloat. And I see what Jacob says. Every time the county sends us a letter, they have this paragraph where they talk about how our budget isn't aligned with, I think they've used the word policy, with our 9% policy. So maybe we could just,
Move on to the next item.
you know, we could move on to the next item, or we could make it clear, maybe CBO Kim could make it clear to the county that we have no such policy or resolution, and maybe they'll quit saying that in the letter. Right?
I would second what you just said.
Do you think that the district can make it clear to the county that that has been a goal, but it is no official statement from the board?
Yes.
I can do that. However, I think it will be good to have that as a goal. That it's not a policy. However, it's not a policy.
Well, I'll up it. The last thing said 16. Our goal can be 16%. How about that?
You know, I would love to be on this board when we got to discuss what our goal of reserve would be. You know, if we had money coming in that gave us the opportunity to set a high reserve, that would be a great day for Albany. Okay, so for now, I think we're going to simply clarify to the county where we stand.
Sure.
Okay.
However, so do we still keep this practice for 9% as our goal, and then just communicate with the county, 3%, this is our, we don't have.
It seems like it's
or-
not actually a practice. I think we're just,
Yes.
It was told over and over again to where it made it sound like it was never official, sounds like.
So we're okay?
how do you
You just,
eliminate something that never,
it sounds to me like you've given direction to staff to let the county office know that there is no policy, there is no resolution, and that the state says that we need to stay to 3%.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to item number 2 under review and discussion, Albany Unified School District Solano Avenue property. Oh, sure, sure.
I'm Alan Maris, Albany taxpayer. I think if you don't, I'm a little concerned that we're looking into a future where our budget is going to disappear in a couple of years. And if we don't have some limit on where we start to recover our income so that we're no longer facing a structural budget deficit, I'm concerned that we're going to run into a real problem with potential bankruptcy and some sort of control by the state. And I think you need to look way ahead, at least a couple of years, to solving that budget deficit problem. And I think your next item should be about increasing income or increasing revenue to solve this budget deficit problem. It's a problem. If it gets down to 3%, it's going to be a problem. You can recover from it, but I think you should start, hopefully, looking at solving the structural budget deficit issue. Thank you.
Alan, our Budget Advisory Committee's mission is to propose both increases in areas where we can increase revenue and cuts that we can make in order to balance the budget. And so they are actively working toward that and advising the board on how we can eliminate the structural deficit.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'd like to add something too. I don't know if this is still part of what we're allowed to discuss, but we're also in the process of trying to reauthorize our parcel, right? Didn't we already hired?
We've put out the RFP for the
Okay,
parcel
so-
tax, so that is coming to the board for review.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here, Mr. Maris. And that brings us back to item number 2, our Solano Avenue property.
Thank you, President Trutain. The board asked me to agendize and bring this topic forward for a board discussion. And I want to start off by saying I really appreciate being able to speak with a couple of members of the community, one Charlie Blanchard, the other one Howard McNenny, who gave me quite a bit of background information. Obviously, this the last time we looked at the Solano Avenue property was about 13 years ago, somewhere around 2005 to 2008. So I'm going to ask the board's indulgence in the fact that I'm hoping that all of my background information is accurate. I could not give much more than what I could collect. So somewhere back in 2005, there was a desire to create affordable housing. And the board did engage in several discussions around the potential development of the Solano property, which is at, I believe, 1216 Solano Avenue. And just so you know, there are actually now 2 addresses there because with the enrollment center, we had to actually create a second address for mailing purposes. So the board did put out an RFP, request for proposals, and received 2 proposals. One from a group,
Oliver and Company.
thank you, Oliver and Company, and the other one was called Cornell Partners, which consisted of Howard McNenney, Red Oak Realty, and Nova Construction. Those proposals were submitted, and I believe it did not go through because of the budget of that time and possibly not able to really come to securing the funding. I don't know much more than that. But as we start to have conversations around what do we want to do with the Solano property, I did add some information about the YMCA that is currently there, what they're paying for the lease. I've asked Juan Barroso to come in case we had any construction type questions or project management questions, and I really appreciate that Makiko Sato, who is our financial advisor, she's from ISUM Advisors, but she also used to work for the company that worked with the district at this time when we did this. So you have the information. I didn't put anything in the financial information because we really don't know what the cost would be, and so I'd like to open up to the board for discussion. You got a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just read through this, and I'm still not quite sure if the last time it was talked about was like 14 years ago. Why is it just, to me, it seems like it just came out of nowhere. I mean, are we seriously proposing doing any of this, or is this, once again, just up here so we can, I mean, it doesn't seem doable. The economy's so well now that we're going to really do this? We're going to kick the Y out? I mean, when I talked about possible district office locations, I was told we can't really touch this property, and now we're talking about all these different options of housing and retail and all this stuff. It just, where did this come from?
Well, I mean, I'll try to, I mean, a previous board seriously considered this, and I've heard our teachers come up to the podium multiple times and talk about their housing issues. And so to me, this seems like it might be an opportunity. A couple of other threads. There's the development that the city is seriously considering on Cleveland about building 64 housing units that I believe will be low-income housing. And I think that, and I don't have details on this, but I think that they're in an arrangement so that they don't have to pay up front for the cost of the building. So I believe that there are a number of different financial structures where the district would might be able to get a building built without having to float a new bond. You know, and also when I looked back at these old plans and they had this retail component, you know, our budget advisory committee has talked about trying to think out of the box about ways that we can increase revenue. So all of those strands kind of came together, and I thought, you know, it would certainly be years in planning, but this board is going to be here for a while. And if this was something that we wanted to, you know, get these large, heavy wheels, you know, sort of slowly turning, you know, we could conceivably have something that had retail, that had district office, that had rental property, and maybe space for, you know, before and after care that's better than what the Y has now. So I don't know, I thought it was worth bringing it back to the board and gauging possible interest.
Right, but to usually agendize something, it has to be seconded. She said this was brought up by the board. It sounds like it was brought up by one board member. Is that how it works? We can just, whenever we...
I can't remember. I believe
said this was brought up. This came out of nowhere to me. I don't understand why this is...
I don't remember that we, you know, how it was developed, but I think it is an opportunity, and I think I agree it's going to be down the road, but given our financial stresses, I think it's a good idea that we start moving ahead. Just in talking about it, that doesn't mean we're going to go much further tonight, except to say, well, is it a good idea? Should we start planning, be it a committee, you know, to be formed to look down the road or whatever? But at least, I mean, that property's out there, and people have talked about it, certainly. And so it's a good opportunity now to revisit what hasn't been visited in how many years? 14 years. So why don't we just go ahead and revisit it? I mean, you know, not just specifically those plans, but get something going so we can have some options in front of us, if nothing else.
We spend a large amount of time talking about cuts and the budget restraints that we're in. Also, people often speak about high rent and businesses you see come and go and it's expensive. But there's one business that will never leave, and it's the YMCA. And they're never going to leave because they are paying such a low amount to be in that space. I definitely think this is something that we could talk about. It seems to me the district could save money even if we just moved them out of there and then made that portion the district office. We just saved, I don't know the exact numbers, but just with that move alone, the district saves money, and that's less things that we have to move. I mean, I think the idea of, you know, building, you know, more property and gaining more revenue is a great idea over time, but we have issues that are happening right now, and so we need to do something. We need to make something happen, you know, as quickly as possible so that we can start adjusting the things that we have versus just cutting more things or raising prices of the programs that people already have in place. We always want to ask for more money, but we're not having these types of discussions. So I think this is something we really need to look into, because we're currently losing money on this deal right here. The way it stands right now, we're currently losing money. And I'm saying that more than once because we're talking about cuts, but we are currently losing money on this deal right here.
Can I ask if our advisor, Menkiko, could, or Mr. Barroso, either one of them, and could speak a little bit about how other school districts are getting projects built and the different financial structures that are being used? I mean, I just read something on Berkeley side today about another low-income housing project in Berkeley. So this is a challenge in the Bay Area to try to create new housing. And I think it falls on all of us to try to look for opportunities.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So Makiko will speak to the financial portion of this concept. I think maybe I'll start by speaking to the different methods that you could use to deliver a project like this and what some other school districts are doing, so I can speak to that. And I'm not here to make a recommendation to move forward with any specific format or any project, but maybe just share some of the experiences that I'm familiar with. So as a school district, or many school districts in the Bay Area are looking at this type of concept where they have an asset, which is real estate, and trying to figure out what's the highest and best use for that real estate, primarily to generate revenue and alleviate some issues like housing shortages, recruiting teachers, retaining teachers, and providing other services to the community. So there's different methods that the district could think about to develop a project like this. in essence, the district needs to decide whether it would put in money into this type of project. Assuming that the district would be interested in not having to put in money to see this project go forward, then that means that the district would have to get interest from the developer community. So there would have to be a developer team, which luckily there are many local teams who I think would show interest. The district would do some form of a request for proposal or request for interest, and start to generate some ideas of what could be done on that property, very much like what was done in 2007. And as I read the materials that were provided in the board packet, it looks like the different teams proposed options to the district. In certain options, the district might pay, if I remember, $1 million into the deal up front. That then would lower the cost of executing the project over time. There was also options where the district would put in no money up front. Now that makes it a little more expensive over time to carry the project. There's also options to use tax-exempt financing, which lowers the cost because a district as a public entity can borrow money at a lower rate than a private entity could from a bank. And so there's different approaches in that sense. And another important question is, what does the district want to get out of this project? And again, there's an array of benefits a district could really pursue. It could be as simple as the district could lease the real estate to a developer for 99 years. Banks typically want to see a minimum of a 50-year lease term. I believe for public property, the maximum is 99. So most people are going to ask you for a 99-year lease. And it could be as simple as the district charges rent to a developer and you collect rent over time. That conceptually should be greater than what you're collecting now, right? So it could be that simple. You could also establish criteria that the project would result in the district having first right to office space that is created in the project, and you could set the criteria that it would be at a favorable rent, at a reduced rent, or that the district would have an option to buy and own that component of the project. And so there's many ways to set this up. In the end, the level of interest from the developer community is really going to dictate what is feasible. And so the project itself has to represent an attractive profit opportunity for the developer who wants to put up the financing up front and take the risk of building the project, leasing it up, managing it over time. And so ultimately that's the test. And if you kind of back up and look at it in simple terms, there was interest in 2007 from, it looks like 2 or 3 teams gave the district proposals. And I'm assuming that then the market sort of fell apart at that time and people backed away. Too much risk and money got expensive at that time. I think if you fast forward to today, the market is probably equal or better than it was in 2007 in terms of how a developer would look at this opportunity. If you look at the housing situation, commercial rents, and just the market in general, I think it's reasonable to think that there would be some interest from the developers in looking at this opportunity. I'm not familiar with the proposals that came in 2007 or why the project didn't go forward. It typically has to do with the ability to fund the project and really feeling like the project is going to be beneficial both to the developer and to the school district. So there's many ways to approach a project like this, and the district really, again, has to decide, do you have resources to put into the project? Yes or no? Maybe you don't. And what is it that the district would want to get out of the project as a benefit? I imagine it's going to be some form of office space at a reduced cost or possibly a favorable purchase option as part of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Barosa.
Makiko.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for an invitation to come and present to answer questions tonight. As the board president Trutain mentioned, there are a lot of school districts who are concerned about housing that's affordable to teachers. So I am working with a number of school districts that are exploring workforce housing. For many of these school districts, they're looking at a variety of financing options. Oftentimes, school districts are looking at a combination. Usually, the financing options, and these are all self-financed, where you're hiring a developer, but the district retains, ownership and control of the project. And in these cases, lease or COPs, which are general fund-backed securities. In the past, when the district considered this, I reviewed some of the analysis that the superintendent shared with me, and they were evaluating self-financed options for the project. And so lease and COP are the main options there. You can also securitize only the rental revenue in a lease revenue bond structure. But to be perfectly honest with you, a lot of school districts are finding that once you're giving the rental subsidies to teachers, the project is, it's difficult for it to pencil out. So a lot of times school districts are looking into other sources of funding, whether that is a sale of other sites, surplus property, or developing some of those other properties and using that to subsidize the workforce housing, or asking the voters, the community, to support a bond to pay for that. And I'm not making any recommendations. I just want to lay out all the options that other school districts are considering. In order to evaluate whether a lease or COP or lease revenue bond is practical here, whether it would pencil out or not, we would need to have more information about the cost of the project and the projected revenue from the project over time. Unfortunately, the data from 2014 is, wouldn't be applicable even if we had access to it, and I think that access is very limited. But, the cost of projects, the cost of rents in the Bay Area is completely different than it was 14 years ago, as you well know. So hopefully that was helpful to supplement what Juan mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Thank you. I think this item was just to bring it to the board's attention that there is possibly an opportunity here. It's just a review and discussion. There's no request for action. Clementine, I think you said that maybe try to get a few people to look into this more for us.
Yeah, I don't know if we just want to mull it over and at a follow-up meeting, whenever it can be put on the agenda, so we could discuss it further about what we would envision and maybe get ideas also from our two speakers as to what would that look like? What kind of committee would we need? What kind of what kind of representatives do we need that would be able to work together to give us some really good facts or data about that? So it would help us out truly, because this is a huge project, a huge opportunity, and so that's why we have to be very careful and thoughtful about how we even approach. How do we want to do this? I mean, we kind of do committees all the time. And is that, going forward, would that be the best way? What would it look like? Maybe we could get some feedback as well. What would be the best way to approach it?
I think having the district office back in Albany is such a high priority. Hopefully it comes back long before we can get this accomplished, but to me, that's a big deal. And the housing. Also, Albany did change its development regulations since this proposal to reduce the amount of parking that's required. So there may be more options available in addition to the market being a little better. So I'd love to have some people explore it.
Yeah, and as you had mentioned earlier, Kim, the city is moving forward or looking at their options down there. So it really does seem like a nice time to go hand in hand, learn from them, as well as maybe, work with them on something.
Would the board be agreeable to revisiting this at an August meeting? maybe trying to get some advice on what kind of committee would work, and seeing if, and then we could bring it back and form a committee at that point.
I think that's a good idea.
Yes. Vice President Doss, does that, seeing it again in August, does that work for you?
It's fine.
It's fine. Board Member Clark, you, no comment? Okay. Okay. Then we will move, oh yeah, public comment? Sure, sure.
Alan Maris, Albany resident and a member of Albany's Diverse Housing Working Group. Just to report a little further on the project that's been mentioned that the city is doing for affordable housing. There's going to be a meeting of the first concept preliminary design at the community center on Thursday night at 6 o'clock on May 23rd. The project so far, the concept is to provide very affordable housing for a wide range of needs in the community. What I've heard so far is that it could be up to 60 units. The rental range would be between $450 and $1,800 a month, which I think would benefit a lot of our teachers, as well as our homeless people. But a significant portion of that could be for teachers. To me, that's very affordable. $1,800 for a 3-bedroom apartment for a teacher, I think sounds pretty good. I'd encourage you to come to that meeting and support the city in their effort to create this affordable housing. And I think you could do something similar on Solano. I'm glad to see you're taking a second look at this. The city is working with Satellite Affordable Housing, who's done many very successful affordable housing projects in the East Bay. Affordable housing in particular, is in crisis. It's a disaster in the Bay Area right now, and I think school districts and city governments need to work together to solve this problem. It's awful to drive down by the freeway. It's
Mr. Mays, can you repeat the date and time for that meeting? Just once more?
I'll repeat it. It's next week, May 23rd, Thursday night, 6 p.m.
Here or at the
Community Center.
At the community center.
Yeah, community.
Thank you so much.
Probably the big room.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for reconsidering Solano. I was on the board when we were considering as well. So.
My name is Eileen Sheehan, and I'm a longtime resident of Albany and the parent of 3 kids who went through the Albany schools in their entirety. I just want to say that I was a little shocked to see this item on the agenda, and it motivated me to come down here. I guess I feel it made me a little uncomfortable that 2 speakers were invited to speak this evening who know something about the business and finance side, but I'm wondering whether you considered inviting people affected by the child care programs that the Albany Y provides, whether you invited them to come speak tonight. And I feel that given the topic that was addressed just before, Albany preschools, my kids went to the Albany, the preschool in the village. I started out living in the village when we moved to Albany, but I think it's a little disturbing that you're it seems like you're taking on more of a business development approach to this. And it really, it kind of felt a little creepy. And I couldn't agree more that affordable housing for teachers is critical here in Albany, and not just for teachers, but for many people. But affordable childcare is too. And my kids not only went to the Albany Children's Center, they went to a variety of preschool programs and aftercare programs provided by the City of Albany, but also by the Albany YMCA, which has been an excellent partner. And I do want to clarify one point, which is the YMCA is not a business. I mean, that rent that was put up there, they're not a business, they're a nonprofit. And they serve the elderly in Albany, they serve many children, they operate programs at the middle school and elsewhere at the invitation of the school district. And I guess I'd just like to urge you, if you're going to form a committee, it's a little, anyway, I'd love to hear someone speak about why only business folks or development folks were invited to speak tonight, and no one was invited to speak about the child care programs. And I'm surprised the school board didn't think about that. It's feeling more like you're a business development board here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I agree. Maybe somebody can answer her question. As I said, I had no idea. This just came out of nowhere. I'm not saying I don't support it, but the fact that it came out of nowhere, and I hadn't really thought about it until you mentioned it, but somehow there must have been some discussions going on because two people were here to speak on it.
I can answer the question. I asked Juan and Makiko to be here in the event that the board had any questions on the financial and the development side, because I did not have that information. I did also notify the YMCA director that the board would be discussing this item tonight.
And I do think that it was my request to put it on the agenda, but I do think that I got a second. I am not sure where that, I'm not sure when that came. I'd have to go back and look at a bunch of YouTube videos. But anyhow, I do think that our speaker made a good point, and I think it's just because I'm on all of the school design teams right now. I mean, Ocean View is going forward, and Marin, we're having meetings for Marin, and and we're finishing up the annex. And so I've been at a whole lot of meetings with Mr. Barossa lately, and so and so we were discussing this. But I think if we were to form, I think that the reason that we didn't invite the public to comment tonight is just because this is just an extremely preliminary discussion about if this board is interested in even forming a committee to look into this. If we were to form a committee, then we would certainly need to have community representation, and I think possibly teacher and staff representation also. So I think just because it was just such a
I mean, I think
initial
it'll be
thing, yeah.
4 to 5 years before we're even talking about who would be using the building. So I think all of us would be taking into consideration what the needs of the district are. The Y uses space all over district property. This isn't the only place. I'm sorry that it gave the impression that that's not something we were thinking about, but I think we are many years away from a real decision process about what would go into those buildings and what would happen to the Y.
I would just like to say that I think this board has really tried to bring different voices to the table, and I appreciate your reminding us, though, again, that we need to keep front and center the different perspectives in the community, and certainly we as, the forefront of education in particular, and who our constituents are. But thank you for the reminder.
Another speaker? Please come forward.
Hi, my name's Mary D'Elia. I'm the executive director of the Albany Y, and it's something that I just want to remind the board is that we've been in collaboration with Albany Unified for many, many years, and we do use and rent a lot of the space. What we do at 1216 Solano is to serve before and after school childcare for the children of Albany Unified. So it's not something that we're making a profit on. It's something that we're doing to serve the community. So it's something that we do and we're happy to do, and we do really well. There's a large need for before and after school childcare, and there will be more next year with the renovation, and we're happy to step in and do that. So I just wanted just to say that and to remind what we do there at that 1216 site. So anyway, if you have any questions for me, you can ask me, but thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for accommodating our changes for next year. For the next few years. We appreciate that.
So the board's wishes for us to agendize this as a review and discussion item for August. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that moves us to Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment Board Policy 5145.9.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, Marie Williams.
Good evening, Superintendent Williams, Board President Chutain, board members, community. I have this evening for you Board Policy 5145.9, hate motivated behavior, and the accompanying administrative regulation. There were about 9 questions asked in regards to this board policy. So with your permission, I'd like to just whip through those this evening and get your input on any potential changes before the board policy comes back for approval at our next meeting. So if you are looking at page 204, on the very first sentence, in order to create a safe learning environment for all students, the governing board desires to protect the right of every student, and on and on and on. One suggestion that came forward was to replace the phrase desires to protect every student with instead, the board's goal is to defend or preserve the right of every student to be protected from hate-motivated behavior. So this, I'm sort of noticing a little bit of a pattern here in terms of a desire to have the language at the very beginning of our policies be to the maximum extent that they can be sort of pretty affirmative, right? So instead of saying desires, sort of really really sort of being intentional and sort of assertive in our goal as a boarding community. So the first suggestion is to replace desires to protect with the board's goal is to defend or preserve. In terms of sort of how that would exactly get wordsmithed, I would do that before the next meeting. But if there is agreement that that phrase in particular is preferred, if there is agreement that that phrase in particular is preferred, I could go ahead and make that change.
To say, with just the defend, or?
The board's goal is to defend. So it would read something like, in order to create a safe learning environment for all students, the board's goal is to defend or preserve the right of every student to be protected from hate-motivated behavior. And if you wanted to retain the word protect, I suppose you could. The board's goal is to protect, defend, preserve.
I'm happy with defend or preserve. I just wonder if if we could just say defend, or I don't want to wordsmith that here. I'm happy
Sure.
with whatever combination of words.
Okay. Are we happy with the board's goal is to? Yes? Okay. Yes. I'll move on to the second one already. The second.
I'm sorry.
Yes?
I don't want to take up too much time, but I don't like the word goal, and the reason why, and we can discuss it, you guys help me out, but I don't want it to be a goal. It has to be I mean, there's goals for certain things. You know, some people have like the goal to be the fastest person in the class, but if you lose that race, it's okay. And then there's goals for other things, but I don't hate motivated behavior to deter that or to stop that from happening, or I don't think it should be a goal. I think it should be an absolute.
You're sort of saying it's like one of our purposes as a
right. It should be a purpose or a value, or, you know, in terms to where there's an understanding that it won't be tolerated. It's not a goal that we'll try not to tolerate it, but that it will not be tolerated under any circumstances.
We could substitute will for desires. So the governing board will protect the right or will defend the right. So it's a positive statement, not it's a more of a this is going to happen.
Right, like there's no question mark.
Yeah.
And maybe to make it stronger, to use both the words. We're going to protect and we're going to defend. So it makes
I'm
it a
okay
little
with
bit.
that, Clementina.
Okay.
We're going to.
Yeah, you know, I like to.
The board will
mess with words.
protect and defend.
Okay, in order to create a safe learning environment for all students, the governing board will protect and defend the right of every student to be free from hate-motivated behavior. Okay, that's the first one. Here's the second one. If you look down on the third line, the sentence continues, and will promote harmonious relationships among students. And so there is a suggestion that we end that first sentence after behavior and then begin a new sentence. The board and staff will nurture, encourage, promote was also suggested, harmonious relationships.
Promote is certainly stronger than encourage. You know, it's,
the next one.
yeah.
I could go with promote.
Okay, so we would begin a new sentence and it would read, the board will promote harmonious relationships. So the wording essentially is the same. We're just taking that super long first sentence and breaking it into two sentences. Okay, is that agreeable? Great. Moving on to number 3, if you, I'm sorry, number 3 in terms of the suggestions that you put forward. If you go to page 205 in the packet, and the second paragraph, which begins, staff who receive notice of hate-motivated behavior, there was a suggestion that instead it say staff who are informed of. Is that change agreeable to everybody?
Director Williams, do you know of any legal difference? Is this some sort of education language that we're, or is this simply what it sounds like?
Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like, yeah.
Then I think that the phrase with informed of is perfectly fine then.
And I think maybe the who received notice of maybe sort of allows for a student reporting it to you verbally, or maybe a student writes it in a note and folds that note in half and gives it to you. Either way, you are receiving notice of that action. But I think it would be still appropriate and accurate to suggest that a note passed to a teacher would constitute in being informed.
Informed.
Yeah. Okay, so I will make that change if that's agreeable. Okay, the next actually is a question. There were two questions around the use of the word target as opposed to victim. And when this came up in the board questions, I did note for you that in our discussion of the board policy on bullying, we actually removed language around targets and victims, and instead and perpetrators, and instead referred to students affected by bullying in that case. And so here the reason for that was sort of we wanted to move away from the labels. And so this is an earlier policy, and so it's sort of interesting to go back to this earlier policy and sort of see our earlier thinking then sort of now compared to our later thinking in the policies that have been coming forward. So I am looking now, still at page 205, and it's now the last paragraph that says, as necessary, the district shall provide counseling, guidance and support to students who are victims of hate-motivated behavior. So there was potentially a suggestion that we change that to targets, and then the rest of the sentence reads, and to students who exhibit such behavior. And then again, there was a suggestion that we just wordsmith that a little bit to say, as well as to students who exhibit such behavior. So is the pleasure of the board that we maintain the language of either victims or targets in this particular policy, or would it be the will of the board that we try to sort of conform the language that we have used in later policies and instead refer to any persons affected by bullying?
Me too.
I'll take your recommendation.
Okay. I think for uniformity's sake, right, if we're going to remove the labels in one place, we probably should remove them elsewhere. Okay?
I think there's agreement there, yes.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty, we are chugging along. And so that takes care of 4 and 5. Now, so that's the board policy. Now we are into the administrative regulation. Prior to drafting this admin regulation, we didn't actually have one. So this is all the result of our work in the committee looking at other admin regulations. I came from a district that had an administrative regulation. We looked at other neighboring districts, and this is what we drafted sort of as a first pass. And so if we look on page 207, so on 207, we begin with really essentially what is a typo. So let me clear up what this should say in the first sentence. An incident of hate-motivated behavior is an act, attempted act, or speech intended to discriminate against or to willfully injure, intimidate, interfere with, oppress, or threaten by force or threat of force any person because of that person's, and on and on and on. So I think what happened was in the editing of the administrative regulation, too many of forces got put together. And so let me read it, that part to you just really quickly again. An incident of hate-motivated behavior is any act intended to discriminate against or to willfully injure, intimidate, interfere with, oppress, or threaten by force or threat of force, and on and on and on. So one is, right, clearly threatening by force. The other is, so maybe sort of swinging a bat or hitting you. And then the other is threat of force, which is I'm going to hit you with this bat. So there really just are two. We ended up with a few more unnecessary of forces. So if that's agreeable, I will make that change. Great. Yes, moving on. There was a question that asked if there is a higher standard of confidentiality related to investigating hate-motivated behavior, and the answer is no. But I think it's sort of worth emphasizing in this admin reg, just because I think maybe unlike other acts, sort of reporting hate-motivated behavior might be sensitive for some students, and so we would want to make sure that those folks that are reporting know that we are going to maintain their confidentiality in all cases. The last two actually are really quite easy. If we go to page 208, I really appreciate your patience here this evening. If we go to page 208, there is a typo that I will correct, right down at the district's hate-motivated behavior policy and administrative regulation, so I'll make that correction. And then the other was a question about victims and targets, which I believe we have resolved in terms of removing those labels. So thank you very much for your questions and for walking through this with me. I will bring this back as a consent item at the May 28th board meeting, and at that meeting we'll have another policy to discuss. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And that brings us to staff reports. We've, oh, excuse me, did I miss something?
Nope.
Staff reports, we've done the special education report, that our last item, education update, local control and accountability update.
Okie doke. I will do this in 5 minutes or less, so we get out on time. And so, sort of the first few slides you've seen before, really the purpose of bringing this item at this time is just to sort of keep people abreast of the process, right? So that when the final LCAP comes for a public hearing in June, people aren't wondering, well, how did that get in there, or where did that come from? So when I prepared this report last year, we were able to provide an appendix that included the feedback that was gathered. And this year, because we have received such an overwhelming rate of response on the online survey, it actually would have added 77 pages to the packet. So I felt like that would be sort of unfair to do to you. And so instead, I will show you on slide page 215 that really the themes from last year are the same as the themes from this year. This is sort of the meat of the thing, right? And if you are interested in reading those 77 pages of feedback, I'll happily PDF them for you and can provide them in a Friday update. But essentially, sort of the major theme last year was around mental health supports. In the preliminary data that we looked at again this year, this is coming up as an issue. Our LCAP Advisory Committee will review the feedback that has been collected since our last meeting on May 21st. I'm really appreciative of their time and attention and effort to sort of reading the feedback firsthand and then sort of engaging the group. And this is sort of what's coming up for us in terms of major themes around what folks are expressing. The other is around intervention that sort of shows up in some different ways. Certainly academic and socio-emotional intervention, but also sort of questions about or requests for support around college and career advising, right, is something that has sort of come up as well in terms of the feedback. Again, safe and welcoming school environments was a theme. We noted when we reviewed the feedback that some folks were sort of asking even for, food, shelter, right? So sort of just the basic needs, right? That asking that the school really attend to the basic needs of our students in terms of supporting them to be successful. Support for diversity and inclusion really continues to come up as a theme, and then also a theme around highly qualified teachers. Low class sizes came up as a theme. What's been really interesting to note is that as I have been taking my roadshow around my various places and presenting, what you'll get is sort of a block of feedback, so then you'll get sort of a lot of similar ideas, and then let's say you go to a different group, and then that group presents sort of another block of feedback, and then that generates some similar themes. So you sort of get these, this concentration of sort of these 15 people all sort of have the same ideas, and then these 30 people are sort of surfacing the same thing. So it's sort of interesting because it allows you to sort of take a step back and sort of synthesize and get sort of what's coming up here. In terms of next steps, I'll skip through these. We've seen these before. In terms of observations and next steps, I'll just quickly note these for you. I do believe we continue to have alignment between the input that we're getting from stakeholders and the goals that are in our LCAP actions and services. I do think that where we experience a challenge is that there simply aren't enough resources to implement some of the actions and services to the extent that we would want. And so the board this evening heard sort of some of the challenges that will be coming up in the future at our elementary sites around implementing their site plans. So we know what we need to do. We have a desire and a will to do it. We just don't necessarily have the resources to be able to carry it out to the extent that we would like. And then I think this is another, this third observation, and this came up last year, and again, I think this evening, around sort of creating systems is how do we, as we are implementing plans, how do we, as we are implementing our district plan, how do we monitor the extent to which that's working outside of waiting for SBAC results to arrive in May or June? And so sort of a hope and high dream of mine has been around sort of looking at, is there a way to implement sort of an assessment system that we could gather all of the data? We would use that system to analyze our data, sort of drill down in the data. Right now, what we're doing a lot of is sending emails to our data database network technician who was sending me lots of Excel files, right? And so if we want people to really sort of use the data with ease, we have to be able to provide that data in a timely fashion and in a manner that's easy to manipulate. And I recognize I'm sort of putting that idea forward in the context of budget cuts, but I do sort of think it's really important for us to think about in terms of sort of really honing the focus of our work, right? Board members this evening spoke to, how are we sort of getting at that question of persistent gaps for students in achievement? And then also the question of if we are sort of maintaining, how do we expect things to be different? So I just sort of want to keep inviting us to think about how we might sort of strategically place some resources in that area. Next steps, there's a meeting on May 21st with our LCAP Advisory Committee. June 11th, there'll be a public hearing of the LCAP, and then June 25th, hopefully you will review and approve. And that concludes my staff report at 10:10. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to agenda items, matters introduced by the board. And I have one. Director Williams just told us that mental health supports were a theme last year and a theme again this year. And in the elementary plans that we heard, I read in those a couple of the principals talked about how they don't feel like they have adequate support at the elementary schools. I'd like to suggest that we hear from our psychologists, Sally Cohen and Shelley Ball, share that position and have them present some data on how many students are seen and the severity of the issues that they're dealing with.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I'm sure you guys haven't seen it, but I think we received an email earlier on about some of these same type of issues, in particular at the middle school. Did you happen to see?
I've seen a few of those recently. Yeah.
So I'm seconding what you're saying, but kind of, I'll talk to you later. There was an email about something specific that's related to what you're saying. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's check in with each other. But
I wonder, Ms. President, if we could add maybe an elementary and middle school, if staff from there could contribute. I know we're not talking about official psychologists, but they have the mental health interns. I just feel that, when we talk about mental health, we're talking about from little kids on up, and some problems are preventative if you work on them when they're little, as opposed to,
Absolutely. It's Ms. Cohen and Ms. Ball that supervise all of the interns. So I would be asking for data from all of the schools to be brought forward. But I don't think they're going to. They're not going to have a chance to collate their data from this year until after school is over. So this would be an item also that would come in August or maybe the first meeting in September, so that we could look at this year's data.
I would suggest September, since they're off during the summer.
Okay.
I just, as an agenda item, for the future sometime, and it follows really on what you're saying. If the board, we've had so much to do on the housing issue and the finances, et cetera. If we could sort of maybe for next year think about focusing on a couple of issues that we will keep bringing back and back and back to the board to remind us of things like, an area in student achievement, some particular area that we want to focus on and see growth, et cetera, issues, challenges, whatever, and one in terms of school climate, for example. And that could maybe be based on LCAP information or staff recommendations, but something that the board could really focus on and say, hey, this is what we're going to really examine carefully on an ongoing basis, so that maybe by the end of the next year, we can feel that we've moved something along too.
mean, that's sort of a strategic planning process, so we can set a plan.
I think especially with the new superintendent, it's a really good idea to agree on a few things to focus on. Yeah.
The consultant is facilitating a discussion of the new superintendent's strategic plan. That was part of our contract with them.
Right, so we've paid for that, some strategic planning help.
So I don't know if it's an agenda item or just I'd like to flag that I think we're ready to start that planning process.
Okay.
And maybe that can include setting some metrics that we revisit on a regular basis through the year.
Yeah.
Oh, don't you do your governance calendar coming up too, the whole year?
The governance calendar.
Yes, so what happens?
We're all kind of talking, so
Yeah.
if we decide that there's a couple of things, maybe it can be put into the governance calendar.
Yes, I've started a list on the governance calendar for 2019-20. It's just a list of topics as the board wants agendized, and then when you meet with the new superintendent, you can work on the governance calendar.
Also, too, to make sure we're not too overloaded. If we have too many things, and you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Couple things. Based on what the community member mentioned earlier, I apologize, I forgot your name, but she made a lot of good points, so I think I'd like to, see that come back so we can talk about that more.
I'm sorry, what was the topic?
The Solano.
It is on the, I have on the list to be re-agendized.
So then, with that, just kind of getting more of the work out, so it's not just so it doesn't come across as a surprise as it did this time around.
I will make a note of that.
And then I'm not sure exactly, since it is like involving students and things like that, but the gentleman that spoke earlier, I'd like to talk about that more. I don't know if Mr. Mosley, I believe, is that a closed session item?
Because it involves probably.
I mean,
Yes, I don't.
This particular.
This particular, yes, it would, I'd have to, it's not an open session item. It is either closed session item or I would have to, let me check on that for you. I don't have a definitive answer, but that is.
Because we discussed the overall policy already.
In general, we can't. That's why.
You can talk about policy.
I think in general, we can talk about.
You can talk about interdistrict policy. For the specific issue to that specific family is confidential.
Okay, so doesn't have to be at the next meeting, but in.
Can it ask to agendize it for closed session?
Right, so, yeah, but, yeah.
It depends.
So I'd like to investigate more, and if warranted, have a discussion about the policy in general as it affects our employees.
So this would come back, I think it would bring back the interdistrict transfer policy again. I believe we just did that, so.
Yeah, it's not that. He wants to discuss this particular case in closed session.
No, I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing that you know that you can't discuss the specific case here at open session, but you just said you want to discuss the policy. Is that correct?
Right, so I want to talk about that specific case in closed session. So I don't want to because that's his private business. I want to talk about that in closed session. But I think that his situation brings up a good point that we should discuss overall, making sure that the policy is working for, because we talked about it already.
That is correct. We did bring back interdistrict transfer policy.
Let me check in with you as soon as we adjourn.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. That's fine.
No, I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.
He's going to start the process. Yeah.